So it is official. The California 25 election race has been called for Mike Garcia, the Republican in the race, who was Christy Smith's opponent. Now, I've been keeping my eye on this race since like a couple days after Election Day, although I might have even been keeping an eye on it on Election Day. Christy Smith had a big lead at one point, but then it got cut down, and there was like this little margin that kind of kept shrinking a little bit, but it simply was not shrinking enough for Christy Smith to actually win. So Christy Smith loses this race. It has officially been called for Mike Garcia. This was counting was going on for a long, long time, right? It's now December 2nd, and it was called like a couple days ago, and Election Day was November 3rd. So it's almost a month, right? So Mike Garcia has garnered 169,638 votes to Christy Smith's 169,305 votes. I mean, that's really razor thin margin close. It's actually pretty crazy how close that is. So that now means that Christy Smith has lost 2 elections for this seat in the span of like 6 months. Because remember, she was up for election in the special election. She lost that one. And then she also had lost this one. So she lost twice. But here what you have is just an example of a really poor candidate. Honestly, anybody could have really seen this coming. Christy Smith is a really boring name. She's a really boring candidate. She's basically a centrist Democrat, borderline Republican. I believe she had helped Republicans, or she was maybe even previously a Republican before. Obviously, you guys all remember that Cenk Uygur ran in this district. Didn't really get a chance, honestly, because Christy Smith refused to do any debates. So she was just kind of hiding and running away. And Christy Smith's entire election apparatus was basically, eating the little brittle cookies and then just calling phones, essentially, to beg for money from corporate donors. That was pretty much what her entire campaign apparatus was. Not a very good apparatus at all. It's pretty crazy that you lose this race when Trump is on the top of the ballot. It's pretty embarrassing to see. Remember, Katie Hill won this race. She supported Medicare for All. So there's a lot of these California Democrats who support Medicare for All, who are in these purple districts, who actually won their races. So Katie Hill was one of those people who previously had done it. There's a couple who are doing it now, like Katie Porter as well. But it just goes to show you, man, Christy Smith is a really boring candidate. And honestly, if I am to be really charitable, I could even say if you had a more charismatic person who was more centrist, like like an Obama or someone like that, have a more charismatic person rather than a really boring Christy Smith. Katie Hill was a lot more interesting. She supported Medicare for All and progressive issues, so she wasn't like this down-the-line corporate candidate who's just pragmatist, right? There's not really any enthusiasm in that. So she was more interesting, had a more interesting pull. But even if you had like a centrist candidate with maybe more charisma, something that kind of drew you towards them, made you interested, maybe they were humorous, maybe they were witty. Christy Smith was none of that. Like, I don't even know what Christy Smith really is. I don't know why she's running for the seat. And it really goes to show you, I know why she's running. She was like the next in line. Like, this stupid line that exists is so embarrassing, where it's like, oh yeah, after you're out, I'm the next state assemblywoman, so it's my chair now. Like, no, you run. It's this weird, like, almost corporate type of thing that exists where, in corporate entities, it's just like, oh, this is my turn, rather than who's really the best at this, who can really win. That was what AOC talked about. She talked about how there's these lines where in the state assembly, there's the top person and ready to take over when the House seat, person who's serving the House seat is finished. That whole thing is just a complete failure is what it is, essentially. So she has lost. When it comes to the county breakdown, Christy Smith won Los Angeles County by a 2-point margin, as total votes was 271K. Christy Smith in the LA County received 138,441 votes to Mike Garcia's 133,066 votes, which is 51-49. And then when it comes to the Ventura Congressional District, Mike Garcia won with 36,572 votes, and Christy Smith had 30,864. So Garcia took it by about 8 points. So she probably wanted to try to expand her vote more in Los Angeles County. That was probably more her way to victory, although maybe it could have been the Ventura County and getting more votes there. Absentee ballot votes, not really like a super great margin for Christy Smith. I mean, the absentee vote, was 52.4% for Smith and 47.6% for Garcia. So, I mean, this is it's just not that great. Like that's not that great of a margin, 52.4 to 47.6. That's not the absentee vote ballot margin that we saw for Biden in a lot of these areas. So, she failed ultimately. She's just a really shitty candidate. I don't know why, people really came around Christy Smith, the horrible candidate. Hopefully doesn't run for any federal office again. Hopefully there's somebody better, like a Katie Hill, for example. But, yeah, man, Christy Smith losing the race. I was waiting to do this video, but I wanted to be sure that she was going to lose, and it is now for sure she has lost.